Mom, we're happy to have you.
Thank you, very happy to be here.
And we're learning a section of Torah called the Tanya, and your son is basically an expert in this area of learning. So really he should be teaching this.
What are you?
We're in the 10th chapter. Okay, essentially what we're learning about now, just to bring it down to earth, is that we essentially said last time that God's unity is so unbelievably awesome. That's one of the main things of the Jew, is that we talk about God being one. But not God being one like in a category of gods. So if you say, is there one God? Yeah, there's one God, obviously, but there's all this other stuff. No, that's soft-core monotheism. We're into hardcore monotheism, which means God is one, we're all inside of God. That's hardcore. Because it means there's nothing but God. We're inside of God right now, an extension of God. And we said at the end of the last chapter that the secret of that is something that's beyond our finite, logical thought systems. It's something that to fully grasp that is a wondrous concept. In this chapter, though, the Baal Tanya is going to give us an analogy to move us in the direction a little bit of comprehending something from our perspective of how God and creation are all one. Meaning at the same time that there's you and I, we're one with God. So at the end of the last chapter, we spoke about how this is, to fully understand this is wondrous and beyond us. And we're going to spend eternity, by the way, getting closer to this awareness. But even in this world, in a world of multiplicity, there's going to be some level that we could grasp it. And he's going to provide us an analogy, something that we're familiar with from the beginning of the Sefer, that will pull us in this direction. So let's jump in. So ach. Ach means, even though we said that the secrets of God's unity are beyond, however, mikol makom, nevertheless, Hoyel v'dibra Torah kedloshen b'nei Adam. Since the Torah does speak in human terms, because the Torah that God wrote is meant for us, it's in a language that we can understand, and therefore l'shachech es ha'oizen, which means in order to soothe the ear, in order to give a little bit of candy for the yearning mind, to give me something I could grab onto to understand this unity, this wondrous unity of the creation and God the Creator. This that we can understand. Lekach nitin reshus, and therefore permission was given lechachmei emes, those who are the people who know the wisdom of truth, which means those who learn Kabbalah. That's what it's talking about. L'daber b'spheres, that we can actually speak about the spheres, which are the way that God is emanating himself into the world and relating to the world. That we actually give definition. We can actually talk about, even though we said God and his spheres, God and his attributes are all one, wondrous unity. A unity that's wondrous beyond the logical mind to fully grasp, but still we were given some level of analogy of God's attributes, which is the way that he runs and creates the world, that we can speak about in our terms. B'derech mashal, by way of analogy, v'kara oisan oiris. Okay, this is part number 1 of today. We call God's attributes the spheres, which is the way that spheres are the way that God creates and runs the world and relates to the world, are called spheres. We call those lights. Now, even the analogy is somewhat of a sublime concept. But why we're going to be calling them lights is that we're going to compare, even though this is an infinitely distant comparison, but at least it's something that we can grab onto. We're going to compare Hashem in a moment to the sun, the Ma'or, and creation to the rays of light emerging off the sun. Okay, so far so good. So that which is expanding or spreading from God, the spheres are called the light, and God is the source of the light. But obviously the rays of light are also one with the sun. Okay, but we're going to go deeper into that concept now. Earlier we spoke about this concept, speaking about the rays of light coming off the sun. Now we're actually going to speak about the identity of the rays of light while they're still inside the sun.
It's Hashem.
Okay, so even though it's all Hashem,
It's all Hashem, but
even as the rays come off the sun, it's still Hashem. But what kind of identity do the rays of light have while they're still inside the ball of the sun? That's going to be the topic of today. It's getting hot in here.
it's all the rays.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. Through this analogy, through this analogy, we're going to at least understand a little bit of the unification. Now, I have to preface, God is nothing physical. God is infinite. God limits himself, i.e., holds back his power in order to allow more and more finite levels of creation to exist until the physical creation comes. But all of that is only from our perspective. From God's perspective, there's nothing but Hashem. So what we're going to see is that when we say that creation is like the rays of light, and God is like the sun, we don't mean God is like the sun and we're like the rays of light. We're just using that as an analogy to compare the unity of the sun and the rays of light. You understand what I mean? We're not saying that God is a sun and we're rays of light, even though that is implied in the analogy. What we're sharing is we want to use the sun and the rays of light to show the unity of Hashem, who's like a sun but not really a sun, and us, who's like the rays of light, to show how deeply unified those two elements are. Okay, that's where we're going with this. Ke'ein yichud or hashemesh shebetoich guf kadur hashemesh, the unity of the light of the sun while it's on the ball of the sun, im guf hashemesh, with the body of the sun. Shenikra ma'or. Okay, the Tanya is introducing this new concept today called the ma'or. What's the difference between or and ma'or? Let's get some.
From the light.
So ma'or, mem could be in Hebrew a causative. So that which causes light. So ma'or means the source, that which causes light. So we're calling God the ma'or. What's the sun? Is the sun light or is it ma'or? The ma'or, right? The sun is the causing factor of light. What's streaming through the window? Ma'or or? Or. But the sun is the ma'or. It's that which causes light. Kamaisha causes ma'or hagadol. So the sun, really, the way we want to look at the sun is as a ma'or, as a source of light. That the sun causes light. That's what it's doing. Ve'haziv ve'anitza, it's mispashit. And then there's this spark, this ray that comes from umeir mimenu, this light that's coming off the sun is nikra or. It's called the light. Kamosha Kosev, like the pasuk said, ve'yikra Elokim le'or yom. And Hashem saw the light, and he called it day. He didn't see the ma'or, that God, that which was coming from the sun, God saw that, i.e., that which emanated from the sun. That's called light, and God called that day. Kishe ha'orhu b'mekoira. However, when the light is still in its source, meaning the light that's coming through this window pane, it's very appropriate to call it or. But what does this or look like while it's still inside the kadur hashemesh? B'mekar b'guf hashemesh. When that light is still inside the ball of the sun, that light is absolutely unified with the ma'or, with its source. Let me ask you a question. While this light that's coming into the window pane, while it's inside the sun, do you call it light?
You call it part of the sun.
Or do you just call it the ma'or? Meaning when the light is inside, meaning the light has a definition when it comes off the sun, but while it's still inside the sun, then we don't call it something separate. We just say that it's the ma'or. I can't even find the light, the or, inside the ma'or. Meaning all you have is the ma'or, the causer of light. Meaning when the cause is still when the effect is still in its cause, then there's no identity yet to the effect. I'll say that again. When the effect is still in its cause, then the effect has no independent identity. What's the effect is the light. What's the cause? The ma'or. So when the light, which is the effect, is still in its cause, the ma'or, you don't see it there. It's absorbed, it's unified in absolute unity within the ma'or. Says the Tanya, Hu meyuchad imay, look at the language. It's absolutely one, betachlis ha'yichud, an absolute unity. Ki ein sham rak etzem echad. All you find there, if you were to take a trip, I don't know if Elon's doing SpaceX up to the sun yet, but if you could get up there and you were to go inside, all you would see is etzem echad shehu guf ha-ma'or, where you just see the ma'or, the cause of light, i.e. the sun, ha-meir, that's causing light. You wouldn't see the light as something different from the cause of it. Ki haziv ve'ha'or sham, this is such an important line, because the ray and the light up there on the face of the sun is etzem echad mamish, is one thing. Mamish. What's mamish mean? Mamish. Im guf ha'ma'or, with the body of the sun, ha'meir, that's shining. Ve'ein lo yishum, look at this, ein lo yishum mitzias klal bifnei atzmai. The light has no independent existence while it's on the ma'or. By the way, all of us, really, from God's perspective, we're literally in the sun. From our perspective, we see us as rays that have moved away from the sun. But the joke's on us because the ray is connected to the sun nonstop. But really, the more you learn Torah, you go on this journey, you trace your ray of light back to the center of the sun. That's why Torah is geschmack. And it's very amazing because it's high voltage. Using the other analogy, you go back through the socket towards the nuclear power plant. Even though now you could use the energy coming out of the socket because it's been downgraded, it feels like it's separate from its source. But if you trace that energy back, it's powerful. So Hashem is, you can't even compare, more powerful. And as you go back up to the source, you come back to more unity consciousness. You don't feel like or and ma'or anymore. You're just one with the ma'or. Because the or inside the ma'or has no separate identity. It's just one being. So imagine walking around thinking about this stuff all day. You're a lot more connected. You feel a lot more like,
Someone you're supposed to.
You're supposed to. There's a constant mitzvah. You're supposed to literally walk around aware that I am on the face of the sun. But at the same time, be aware that I'm also the ray of light that's moved away and I have things to do as an independent being. With a mission and mitzvahs. But at the same time, that's called Yichuda Ila and Yichuda Tata. at the same time as I'm aware that I'm literally on the face of the sun, I have to be aware that also I'm the ray that's moved away from the sun, but I'm connected to the sun. So the Jew is here to share with the world that you have to live with that level of God consciousness all the time. You guys thought it was just Lux and cream cheese. You have to come to Yeshiva. Whenever people come to Yeshiva, so one of the things is like sometimes like you have like moms and dads and they're like, like why are you becoming so religious? So one of the things I say you should like I say, did your parents ever send you like Sunday school? Like you heard about that Sunday school, like Tuesday school, things like that. So they say, yeah, of course. We all went to like Sunday school. So I say, tell your mom, you sent me to Sunday school. It's your fault. I just took it seriously. You started all this. So that's what it is. No, I say to Sundays, I didn't mean like you would like really take it seriously. I thought like, it was just, lox and cream cheese. It's like a cultural thing. And you're like, no, I started to really like see the truth here. And it speaks so deeply to my essence. So look at this. And like these things that we've mentioned, and even more than this, which means the analogy that we just presented, using that analogy, but way more than that, meaning God is not a sun and we're not the light. We only used the analogy to show the unification between the ma'or and the or, but even that is not sufficient to show the unity because God and His creation is infinitely more unified. But at least it's an analogy that pulled us in a certain direction. That makes sense? That's why the Tanya brought it. So in the world of Atzilus, the highest world that we go to, let's say, for all intents and purposes, and God, which that place we said to Hashem is like physicality, and in that place is a wondrous unification, immahusay v'atzmusay, kaviyachol, hamislabish b'toichem, umisyachad imoim betachlis hayichud, absolute unification. Me'acher shenimshechu v'netzlu me'ito yisborach, al derech mashal kaderech hispashtus ha'or me'ashemish, just like the light coming off the sun, ach loy mamish b'derech zeh, rak b'derech rechoike v'nifla me'hasagasenu, meaning the analogy that we got, in other words, was only a little bit according to what we can understand with a finite mind to appreciate the unification of the ma'or, the sun, and the light. So let's summarize. The Tanya explained that even though Hashem and the creation is a wondrous unification, and unity within God is what he called a raza de memenusa, the secret of emunah, that finite systems can only take you so far. And you have to realize that that unification is something beyond finite systems. It's something that we have from Kabbalah, which is rational because we have an unbroken tradition from Sinai. Even though there is a very high level place of understanding and beyond normal understanding of God's unity, in this chapter the Tanya says, let's at least give a little bit of an introduction by way of an analogy of the ma'or, the sun, and the or, the light that comes off the sun. So even though the ma'or is the ball of the sun and the or is that which is coming through the window, but when I trace the or back to the sun, do I see inside the sun or and a ma'or, or do I just see the ma'or? I don't call it even or then, I just call it the ma'or. So that is the analogy of God being the ma'or, but he's not a ma'or. It's just an analogy. And the unification with the or, that which is emanating, which is God's attributes, which is God's wisdom, God's understanding, God's kindness. And we're going to see, he's going to take us into all the days of the week. Different parts of God's attributes come out each day of the week. Sunday is going to be chesed. Monday today is going to be Gevura. Then Tiferes, all the lower midos. Shabbos is Malchus. That each one of the days represented another revelation of God's light, of God's or. They're all called Oiris. But all of those Oiris are really one with the Ma'or. We just seem to see a perspective of Oiris once the light is coming off the sun. But really, the God and his attributes are so deeply one, like the way that it looks like of the light on the surface of the sun. Yeah? Okay, last couple words. Me'asagenu, ki gavo derachenu medarachenu. Because the truth is, there are certain things that remain a mystery. And it's part of the humility of a human being is to be able to be humble enough to say that there's certain secrets that we can't, so to speak, figure out. And we're okay with that. And that's very humbling. And it's also very honest. That if God is infinite, it would make sense that there's certain things that can't be fully figured out. We have a huge amount that God gave us to figure out. And he says you can use your mind to plunge the deepest depths possible. But you're honest enough to know there's certain things that are beyond. And even the things that are beyond will even give you some analogies. And the Kabbalists enjoy giving rich symbolic analogies. A lot of Kabbalah is really going into analogies. Very rich, symbolic, very deep analogies that pull you in. You, so to speak, fall in to certain concepts. And that's why a lot of Kabbalah is, if you get it, you get it. The teacher has to say things, and if you didn't get it, he's like, can you please explain that? No, I'm sorry, I can't. If you got it, you got it. I'm speaking to myself. I'm trying to, if you get it, you get it. A lot of it is like that. That's what it says in the beginning of Ein Dorshan, is that certain things you just can't respond to. Meaning if the student doesn't, if he gets it, he got it. If he doesn't get it, then
It is what it is. Too bad, so sad.
Yeah, and that's just part of it. Okay, go to the mikveh more. Say more Tehillim, and then you'll hopefully open up and be able to receive certain things. So a lot of the symbolic, you should know, this is a very rich symbolic analogy that the Kabbalists have been speaking about for a very long time. Like imagine tzaddikim in Tzfat, in the caves, with the Arizal, talking about this analogy. Like this is what they were talking about. The unification of the light of the sun while it's still inside the sun. So you're in the Masorah now. You're in the richness of this world. So spend time with this. Walk around with this. And if you felt you had to go to the Bahamas, just go to this analogy because it'll warm you up, this analogy. We should be Zoycha Mamish to have tremendous unity consciousness and see tremendous blessing for the whole world and to see Mitzvah Shem, Mashiach come and bring peace to all of humanity in the Binyan Beis HaMikdash B'mehera V'yameinu. Amen. Amen. Have a wonderful day, my friends. Thanks for coming, Mom. We appreciate it.